All right, welcome Bunker Labs. Hope you guys are having a good Wednesday so far. It is about to get better. As part of our All In campaign, we are here for another town hall with our guest, Brian Hamilton. But first, I am going to turn it over to our master facilitator and interim CEO, Blake Hogan. Blake, thanks for being here. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, Liz, thanks for having me. I was just saying, I always feel like that awkward reporter that's waiting for the call in, and you're like, am I on? Am I on? So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Brian, for joining us today. It's a real honor to have you. We've got a community of military entrepreneurs, family members, spouses that are in the fight right now. And
Right.
you've been there, you've done that. And so love to welcome you to this audience again. Thank you for being with us in Atlanta at our national summit, and then again recently in Charlotte at our launch. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here, Blake. Good to see you again.
Yeah, this is an honor to me. So we have similar upbringings with our Marine fathers and kind of working class background. So I've got my Lou Holtz, Notre Dame, Play Like a Champion.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got it too. Yeah.
So. I'd love to just start and kind of give folks a glimpse into the background of who you are and how that's shaped where you've gone. And I think, specifically, it's interesting to talk about how your first kind of, bigger business after school was coin-operated laundry, and then going into fintech, which is a natural transition for most people to go from coin-operated laundry to
yeah. Can you see the logic there? Do you get it?
I get it. Yeah. They're both deal with money and people.
Right.
Exactly. So if you don't mind, so let's just kind of give a quick kind of background into this. And also for those that are in the audience, so we opened up, or Brian, does a lot of work with youth and kids as well. So if your kids are in the room, bring them in there. I just ran back from getting our kids down for a nap. So we'll pray they stay asleep. But if your kids are in there, bring them on and have them listen in. So Brian, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your personal background before we get into the business insights.
Yes, first, but before we do that, by the way, I have to say, for all the parents, melatonin is a great thing. Use lots of melatonin. Use lots of melatonin. I don't know how my boys are, Blake, are a little bit older now, so I don't know how the parents are dealing with it, and even the kids. They got to deal with the parents. But
right.
Let me say this: I'm reluctant to go back too far in my entrepreneurial journey because it's like literally started. My mother said I started when I was like 6 and 7. I absolutely don't even remember that. I don't know how it's possible, but I do remember at 9 and 10, we didn't have a lot of money, and that's a platitude. I mean, we were food stamps and not always a lot of food. I mean, there's a whole backstory to that. My father was a Marine. My father did not graduate from high school. He eventually got a GED. But because of that, because my sister Susan got sick, we had a lot of scarcity, which is a nice way of saying we just didn't have any money at all. And so in order for me to make money, I couldn't go down and get a job at a restaurant or whatever, go down and work at a gas station when I was 9 and 10. I started businesses. It changed my life. I mean, it really changed my life. And for those of you who are listening, some of you already know this, it's amazing the additive power of anything that you do in starting a business. You start out, you just cut a lawn, you get paid. Maybe the person doesn't want to pay you, you got to deal with that. And you learn by doing. I paid my way through college, paid my way through grad school, and I really did. I did it by owning businesses. When I got out of Duke, you were right, in 1990, my dad, he didn't go to high school, so, you get out of Duke, it's like this big deal. And, get the West Campus. It looks like they stole a couple of buildings from Cambridge. It's very fancy. And well, anyway, I get out of Duke and I say, my father says, what are you going to do? And I go, well, I'm going to start a coin laundromat chain. And he's like, what the heck? What are you doing? Go get a normal job. But I really wanted the freedom from being an entrepreneur. And I knew that eventually I would do quite the bigger play, but I needed capital. I didn't have capital. So I did that. Sold that chain of coin laundromats, and I started a software company, SageWorks, which you know about. And of course, that was the big score. I ran SageWorks for 20 years. I sold it to a private equity firm back in 2 years ago, basically. But I guess what I would say to your audience is, I've lived all over the spectrum. I did lawn service, I did the coin laundromats, I did software, and I think it's really important. Let's say we don't get any wins today at all, Blake. We get no wins, right? No wins. Let's get a quick one. I remember very well. I've had 100 near-death experiences. I mean, 100 of them. You know, the bullet's flying at your head. It misses you by like 1 inch, or maybe gets you by a quarter. You know, you gets in there. Like, I've lived it. I remember in 2008 in the financial crisis at SageWorks, metaphorically, we went from having $100 of sales. I mean, these proportions are correct. I mean, we went from $100 of sales per month metaphorically to like 10. It wasn't a 10% decrease in 2008. We sold to these things called banks. We went from $100 to $10 per month in revenue. And I remember looking at the CFO, Drew, who is way more, reasonable and better at numbers than I am. And I'm like, dude, we're going to be out of business in 60 days. Mm-hmm. And by that time, we had a lot of employees. So we grew. We were never Microsoft, but we had hundreds of employees. So I was like, oh my goodness. My point is, I think the most important thing to communicate to anybody listening, I don't know if they're all business owners. I don't know if they're all Bunker Labs people or whatever. You got two great ones here locally, by the way, Nick and Dean, as you know, they do a great job in North Carolina, terrific. But I'm trying to communicate that I've lived through cash flow crises, and I don't want to make light of it, Blake, because I think sometimes Congress doesn't understand that there's people involved in these businesses. They're real people, and I've lived through it. And I guess what I would say is, I'm kind of supposed to be like the guru, but some answers I don't have. I'm sitting in downtown luxurious Apex, North Carolina, the peak of better living, by the way. And I look down on all these small shops, Blake. I got the bakery, the restaurant, I got the antique dealer, the printer. What are these people doing? Most of them have been shut down. So I'm talking to you from the heart here. I've been where you are, no matter who you are. I've been there. I've been through these situations. So today, maybe we can turn the channel into how do you deal with it? But I don't want to make it seem like I got all the answers, because I'm very worried about the 26 million businesses in this country who are small businesses. They provide 65% of the jobs. They provide all the innovation, or most of the innovation. What are we doing for them? How do we do it now? So what I would like to convey at some point is, what can you do as an entrepreneur to manage through a crisis? What do you do? And I just want people to know, I'm not trying to make a feeble attempt to relate to my audience, but my heart goes out to you because I've been there, believe me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just get right into it, Brian. It's, right now small businesses are getting decimated. Congress is talking about, putting another 310, 320 billion in, it's people are trying to get access to it, and you've got a supply side with individuals that are getting these stimulus checks, and you're trying to solve for the businesses. But I think, we at Bunker said, like, well, what can we do? Right. And it's like, so for us, we broke down into three things. We want to have, we want to highlight and elevate entrepreneurs that are in the fight and help tell their stories, so people know that they can go, to Dope Coffee and go to dopecoffee.com and buy Mike Lloyd's coffee, right? You can go to, there's a Derek Jackson in North Carolina. He's got Grass Grazed LLC, right? Like, these guys are in the fight. They're doing it. Right. The other was to get actionable resources. And the third was to get perspective from past crises. So I think let's hit the two of those here. Okay. Specifically when it comes to cash management, walk us through what that means to you.
All right. Yeah. So before I even do that, and I don't want this to be hokey, I really don't, but I've managed all kinds of companies. I've had business 2 employees, hundreds of employees. The first thing I would say is know what you can control and what you can't. Now that sounds lame. I know that. It sounds like a bumper sticker, but it is vital. Stress comes in a bundle, right? For everybody out there, that it's a bundle. Stress is a bundle. Maybe you're not getting along with your wife or your husband, or the kids are running around, and you can't pay your bills, and maybe your business is suffering, and the dog's fighting with the cat. Stress comes in a bundle. So what I do is I strip out what I can control and I throw out what I can't. You can't control the economy. My goodness, you can't control Congress. We need to have more people in Congress who have run a lemonade stand. Like literally, why even put a cap on the money? Who's coming up with these ideas? We got to get money to the business owners, but we can't control that. We can't control the economy. We can't control Congress. We can't control the presidency. What can you control? What can you control? Number one, you can control what you think about. No one can take away control of what you think about. And that sounds hokey, but it's true. Right now, I'm reading good things. I'm reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm reading Growing a Business by Paul Hawken. I want good information in my head to give me perspective on what's going on. We got leaders out there. We're talking military here, right? Bunker Labs, I love your name. It's military. How to be a leader. Control yourself. Control what you think about. Very, very important how you think about things, because people don't understand this. This is why I love Bunker Labs. I used to work with the military many years ago. I was telling Todd, great CEO, I was telling Todd months ago about this, that I used to help military people start businesses before you guys kind of galvanized this into a movement. And we got leaders out there, and we got to be leaders. We got to be in control of ourselves. By the way, stop watching the news. Like, for real, stop. Every time I watch the news, I want to take a nap. It's this person's got it. This person's got it. Everything's negative. So get control of yourself. Get control of what you think about. Don't worry about the things you can't control, but you can control things. So what can you control? Vociferous customer support and service. If you're still in business, we can always do better at serving our customers. You can go for customer referrals. We can always be better providers of services to customers. Everybody can do that. I know it sounds platitudinous, but it's true. We want to do great with customers. We want to get referrals. On expense management, we always spend more than we should. It's amazing to me as I've gone over. I remember Charlie's over here on my right here. He's a lot younger than I'm. There he is. There he is. Come on in, Charlie. There he is.
Hey, Charlie.
That's not social distancing, by the way. You're breaking rules.
6 feet.
You're breaking rules. You're breaking rules. But on a serious note,
wash your hands after.
yeah. But you go through your transaction register. What are you spending money on that you can cut? But be very careful that you don't cut out of panic.
Mm-hmm.
Panic's never a good thing, because if you cut out of panic, like employees, for example, it may be hard for you to get them back, but we can always cut our spending. By the way, Blake, I want to mention this because I always want to give people some takeaways that are like super real.
Yeah, please.
Some of you who are listening now, you're going to be late on your rent. You're going to be late on your mortgage. You're going to be late on your credit card. You're going to be late on your car loan. You're going to be late, L-A-T-E, late. Get ahead of that. Go to your lender, go to your landlord, write a note, say, look, because they're nervous too, by the way. The landlord's got a mortgage as well. They just don't tell you that, right? So go to them and say, write them a note. Hey, Mr. Banker, Mr. Landlord, Mrs. Landlord, whatever. I've lost 50% of my revenue. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to pay you 50%. I'm going to make it up to you. I'd love to dialogue with you. Blake, a lot of running a business, Blake, is mindset and psychology. When we get afraid, even all you military people are never afraid of anything. I understand that. You're a human being. You get afraid. We run from people. We put our head in the sand. I do it. Blake does it. We all do it. Try to avoid the tendency of having people track you down for money. If you're going to be late, hit ahead of the curve. Hit ahead of the curve. Don't wait till the curve. Hit ahead of it. And communicate with people, because when you communicate proactively with people, you're letting them know, hey, I'm in control. I got a plan here. I'm going to pay you. Here's what I'm going to do. And this way they know they're not tracked. When people are tracking you down, then you're causing them to get panic. But one last thing, Blake, with your employees, and I've had to do this, by the way. Early days of SageWorks, Blake, we couldn't make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a fun thing, by the way, in case you've ever done it. So I'm in control. I got a plan. I write down my plan on a sheet of paper. I come with all my employees, whether I got 2 or 200. Here's my plan. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. You might get feedback from them. Well, what do you think? But you come to your employees with a plan. Because, by the way, newsflash, they already know what's going on.
Right.
In fact, it's worse than that. They might think it's worse than it is. So we want to get ahead of it and say, Mr. Employee, Miss Employee, whatever, here's my plan. We're 50% of revenue. We're going to keep 100% of our staff till May 15th. We'll let you know at that time what the cuts are going to be well in advance. You're part of our family. We don't want to lose you long run. But I believe, Blake, in radical honesty with employees. Radical honesty. And that is about being a leader, which is why I love Bunker Labs, because we're not just teaching people how to shoot the rifle, right? We're teaching people how to be leaders. And I'm sorry, by the way, I know we might have 3 people, we might have 3 million, I don't know. But my point is, I know some of you are really suffering, and I don't want to seem like I'm a know-it-all in platitudes, but these are some basic constructs that I use.
Well, and I think that's what is sort of the unifying factor of this entire COVID situation is that, like, we're human beings. Like, we're fallible. We have our challenge. Like, there's like this isn't the financial crisis that was caused by human error, right? This is something that we are all in. We're all affected in one way, shape, or form. And I think to the communication part, like that is something from a military standpoint that I think we could struggle with, because we want to be like, we got it, I got it, I'm good, right? But it actually, to get out ahead of it and to communicate preemptive. One is by
the way, I mean, I was raised by a Marine, no education, but very wise. We're educated, you're educated probably, right? So we think when we get educated, we're wise. Education is not related to wisdom. He was very wise, but he would always say to me, hey, Brian, you can't pick up a tornado. Meaning, we got a tornado out there. It's this virus thing which is going throughout the whole country. Let's be real. We can't handle that. That's big. That's God's domain, or I don't know, it's somebody's domain. It's outside of our control. So communicate out ahead of people where you are, what your plan is, but don't have them chase you.
Yeah, right. I mean, it is, you see this all the time, right? Like, mission first, people are always like, it's just getting back to the basics. Like, it just sort of strips away all the crap and gets like right to the core of like, here's what it is. Like, here's how much cash I have, and like, here's what I can do.
Well, if do you mind? I'm sorry. You're hitting buttons.
Fire away.
Button. Well, some practical advice: money in and money out. Money in the front door, money out the back door. Money in. My career is in finance, but money in and money out. Revenue in, expenses out. Good and monthly forecast. You could do it on a sheet of paper. No problem. You could do it on a napkin. You could do it in a spreadsheet. Charlie's a lot younger than I am. He doesn't remember Lotus. He thinks Lotus was a yoga move. But we got some old people here that remember Lotus. But you could use Excel, which is the spreadsheet today. But month by month, what's the revenue coming in? Sometimes we don't know, right? What are the expenses month by month? That's why I like 3 forecasts, Blake. 3. I want to know worst case. I want to know mid case. The virus cleans up maybe in a couple of months or whatever. And maybe best case, maybe it cleans up in a month. But I want 3 concurrent forecasts so I can look at what's coming in and what's going on. You really need to know your numbers, Blake. It's a big deal. I don't care. If I were running IBM, I'd do it on 1 sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. Money coming in, all the revenue, money going out. One last thing on this. I get interviewed on TV and I write articles, Blake, and all this. Like, guys like me, we always come across like, what's the economy going to do? Well, I think blah, 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 blah. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the economy, right? Nobody, especially today. So is it going to be 2 months? Is it going to be 6 months, a year? We don't know. So I like good cash flow forecasts that basically take into consideration 3 scenarios: worst case, mid case, best case. I hope that helps.
No, it's great. I mean, it's again, it's about breaking it down to the basics. So we've got a couple of other questions here, but I want to just invite the audience to be thinking about their questions. So Liz, if folks have questions, to start popping those up so we can get to those. Thank you. All right, so we hit quite a few things in there. The one thing that comes to mind is the need for so you talk about mindset, but we've taken a mindset at Bunker to be positive, forward thinking, and to lead with empathy and grace.
Right.
And like that's helpful. The question that I think a lot of people struggle with, because some people are busier than they've ever been right now.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
They might not be able to get paid, but they're busy, right? So how do you balance the need for like the today versus tomorrow? Like what's critical? Because it's like you don't get tomorrow if you don't deliver today.
Yeah, an excellent question.
But at some point we will rebound.
Yes.
And it's, are you rebuilding in the way that sets you up to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I'm going to keep it simple. Cash. If you, and I know it seems trite, but if you got cash, you're still in business. When you run out of cash, you got problems. So I really want to know what my cash, view it this way, but that's the center of the circle. The center of the circle is cash.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep as much cash as we can. We don't want to be short-sighted. We don't want to be panicked. By the way, every recession we have ever had, we got these people out there. This is the next Great Depression. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. They must have this great crystal ball to God that I don't have, that they can project that. We don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So in the absence of anything, look at the cash balance, manage your cash. If you got cash or some credit, you're going to be okay. So we want to really look at that carefully, cut the expenses we need to. Don't get too philosophical. Manage cash. It's key. By the way, side note, I've never known a business to go out of business because of a lack of profitability. I've only known businesses to go out of business because they run out of cash. And profits ain't cash. Right. They're different things.
Yeah. I mean, do you have money? Do you have actual cash? So you've hit a few of these things, and I think we want to be able to understand that like this is something that's outside of our control. But you've got your unknown unknowns, your known unknowns. So like what so cash, right? You can control at least how you spend what you have.
That's correct. Yeah.
What are some of the other sort of things that you're doing when you're operating in the crisis to be able to say like, this is what I can control.
Yeah. Well, one thing, by the way, if you want to, I don't know the total composition of the audience here, but one thing I do want to mention, it's because truth is, like, I'm looking at a person running an antique store here on the Main Street, Blake, and I'm like, the revenue is going to zero. So right there, you want to get the revenue and the expenses probably to zero until you reopen. But I do want to address something. There's a program called PPP. I know you guys have talked about it. Yeah. PPP. It basically gives loans to businesses. And I have a lot of problems with the way they put that together. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something positive. You get your application in there to the PPP program. You got to go to a bank. I want to use a bank that is an experienced SBA lender. I don't want it to go to just any bank. Mm-hmm. So there's banks that do SBA lending. There's banks that don't. I want to go to a bank that does SBA lending. They're experienced. They have a relationship with the SBA. I want to get in line first. I want to get my application in early. They ran out of money one time. They're probably going to run out of money again, by the way, just so you know. But we get our application in early. It's complete. And then every 3-4 days, don't be annoying. Send them an email. Hey, John. Hey, Debbie, still here. Humanize their experience. Make sure that they know you're there. If you haven't started the PPP program, in general, I like small banks where people might know me. versus large banks, but you can use a large bank. But specifically with cash flow management for companies that are massively hit right now, you're not getting the revenue, you got to borrow the money. So your PPP program is your best bet. Get in line early and make sure that that banker knows that you exist. Don't just send it into Mrs. Bank of America and hope that Mrs. America wakes up every day and says, boy, Blake, I'm really thinking about you. You got to prod them once every 3 or 4 days, just very politely, but let them know that you exist.
Yeah, that's great. So this is an interesting question, Brian, from our audience here. It's around maximizing employee participation. So you've got, one is just like the human element of people are homeschooling, people are working from home, people are doing that. So, you've got things like 4-day work week, you've got, other things like where's sort of your mind at around, making sure that people are contributing in a way that is both accretive to the company and, personally, fulfilling, but also just like acknowledging of what's going on.
Yeah, well, let me start with the latter point. Again, how should I say this? If your heart is right and if your intentions are good, if you are generally a flawed person but a good person, that gives you a leeway to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know that seems so obvious, Blake, but it's really important. Like if you got a restaurant and you're doing only curbside, your employees know that your revenue got cut by 70%. I know that without even looking at the numbers. And so I always start with, hey, guys, here's where we are. We've lost 70% of our revenue. Here's how we're going to manage this. We've applied for the PPP program. One person asked me last week on Inc., by the way, Blake. It was a very good question. I did a thing for Inc. magazine, and they said, hey, should I tell people which people are leaving? The answer is actually yes. What I don't want to do with my employees, I don't want to go in and say, hey, on May 15th, if we don't get our loan, we're going to let half of you go. To me, this is very poor leadership, even though it may seem obvious. Mm-hmm. What I want to start doing is talking to the people who I might need to let go. Again, radical honesty. And I think you do it in a measured way, in a thoughtful way. Regarding the prior part of that question, I don't know. I mean, some businesses, a lot of them, look at what you're doing. I mean, we can operate remotely. I would communicate a lot with people through Zoom and talk, hey, how's everything going? How's everything going with the kids? How are we doing on this deadline? If people can work remotely. Mm-hmm. If you can work remotely and the company can generate cash flow remotely, you're okay probably. I mean, not great, but you're okay.
Right.
The ones where I'm concerned about is like a preschool or a restaurant or good gracious, that's harder.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's something that, I think we'll save for another conversation on how do we rebuild this. But we've got a question here around, okay, so you mentioned starting, or the two questions around sort of youth here. So any business lessons you would teach your kids while homeschooling, and how can you encourage your kids to explore these interests?
Yeah, I don't, just to be honest, I always promised myself when I do this, I'd be honest. It's hard because for me, when I started, I needed money. Mm-hmm. But I would say, for the parents out there, there is absolutely no replacement. We don't learn football by reading a textbook. Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point, you got to get out there and get hit, right? So I want my kids out as much as they can be, actually running a business, pressure washing, pooper scooping, which, by the way, is a great business. People don't like to pick up poop. It sounds silly, but we teach people how to do that because that's a great business. And you don't have a lot of competition. But I want my kids out doing stuff. I mean, I guess you could make them do it, but, maybe they'll like to do that. They make their own money. I always felt good running my own show. My parents never got involved. But I would just encourage them. One thing, by the way, I don't want to, Charlie I always forget to plug us, but we have a new program we just released, Blake, called Starter High, and it's actually taught by kids. It's terrific. I mean, it's kids teaching other kids how to be entrepreneurs. That's on our website. And it's 4 hours. It's really, I mean, I know it's our program, but it's well done. We don't charge anything for it. Have the kids watch it. And there are a bunch of young people from middle school through high school who have started businesses.
That's great. Brian, can we get that link to send that out to folks?
Yeah. Can you send it to them? Yeah.
We've got,
Yeah.
we've,
We will.
okay, great. We'll have, Liz will send that out in
Yeah.
the recap with that, or maybe in the notes. But yeah, I mean, we got a lot of folks with kids at home right
Yeah.
now. So you know, we're at the 30-minute mark. So if you've got a question that you've been waiting on, go ahead and get that into the queue now. So
Yeah, and by the way, if I might, do you mind? I'm sorry. I mean, you invited me on here. I'm a very hard charger. So yeah. But the one thing I'd ask, I'm asking the audience, okay?
Please.
Our sessions are always best when people ask questions that are very specific to their need. We don't do this because we're embarrassed. You know, I won't call your name out, but ask me maybe a couple of questions that are very specific, maybe a little personal, maybe a little icky. Because if you ask that question, what you don't realize is that's going to help hundreds of other people. Again, as adults, we always, you know, we don't want to show our weakness, but a couple of questions on cash flow, dealing with landlords, dealing with employees, the icky component of running a business. I think that'll help the audience. So not like, you know, what kind of business can I start in this crazy? I mean, I'm glad to answer anything, but I really want to talk to you if you're struggling. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And by the way, Blake, you know, a lot of this comes down to human things, psychology. Look, if you're running a business right now and you're losing revenue, the first thing is don't dump on yourself. Don't dump on yourself. You've got the world to dump on you. You got the news, you got the kids, the wife, the husband, whatever. Don't add to it by getting down on yourself. You did not create the situation, but maybe a couple of questions that are sort of icky, like really sticky ones about, hey, Bri, I'm going bankrupt next month. I got, you know, I'll take anything, but those are helpful to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got one here. It's an autism therapy company in Texas. Okay. So they have they've got about 30 employees. They've been there for a while, about 5, 6, 7 years now. The specific question is around cash. It's how do you manage your what's the better scenario for the employees, whether it's actual unemployment insurance, PPP. So they did get approved for the PPP, but they're waiting on it.
They're waiting. Yeah.
Now they're getting crunched from insurance. So you take your $100 to $10 payment that you're getting. So same thing, payments are going down. So what they've done, they've transitioned to being in-home, which creates its own set of challenges. Yes. But the specific challenge is like, what do they do with this team of 30 people when they're in this cash crunch between PPP, between insurance payments and unemployment?
Yeah, I don't want to call out their name, but thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm not just saying that. I really appreciate that's an icky question. And the truth is, I don't know, right? Because I don't know precisely what's going on. So let me talk generally, and then I'll try to give you some pointers, okay? Generally, keep the animal alive. Keep the ship floating. Keep the fort safe. If there's no fort, you can't put anybody in it. If there's no fort, who are you going to put in it? So you got to keep the business alive. And as a matter of fact, if you're talking to your employees, say, look, guys, here's the situation. We lost 30% of our revenue. We got this, we got that. I got to keep this business alive, not just for me, but so that we can come back into the fort. If the fort goes away, who are we going to put in it? So that's a very, very important thing. Now, specifying that a little bit. So remember, don't feel guilty about being not selfish, but there's nothing wrong with keeping the ship afloat. If the ship goes down, all the sailors drown. You see what I mean?
Right.
So we want to keep the ship alive. That's rule number one, keep the ship alive. And so what I want to do is I want to, again, and if you're not good at this, by the way, no problem. Go to an accountant. Accountants are not just for taxes, by the way. They're not very friendly people all the time. No disrespect to any accountants out there. I dealt with them for 20 years. Not super friendly, not big personalities, but they're very good at cash flow. They're very good at numbers. Make a projection, worst case, middle case, best case. And then you got the hard thing that you mentioned. 30 employees is hard. That's hard. And so you may have to stagger it. We're expecting the PPP loan on June or whatever it is, and we're going to have these 5 people get laid off. By the way, whenever you lay somebody off, you're dealing with the people. Don't forget that. These are people. So sit with them. Here's what's going on. You are a caring person. You care about them. You care about the ship. Tough situation. They know that, but we might have to let 5 people go between now and May 15th. If there's no PPP loan between May 15th and June 15th, we don't get any money. We might have to have another 5 go. You might have to have all 30 go right now, but you start to stagger that. That's an excellent question.
Well, good. Well, that prompted a few more. So if you don't mind, we'll stay on.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind. Yeah.
All right. So we've got, all right, this is from an entrepreneur that recently started a consultancy business. So she's asking, how should new businesses approach development in the current climate when they feel kind of, quote, icky about selling? How do you market without feeling insensitive or tone deaf?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, Blake, I'm 57 years old. When I was 37, you should have invited me then. I thought I had all the answers, you know. I was like an expert, and I was very confident too. Very confident. Now I was confidently wrong, but I was confident. Now I get a little, you know, more experience, more. It depends on who you're consulting to. If you're consulting to a business like restaurants when they're sucking wind, I mean, whoa, we got to be very careful, right? If you're consulting to businesses that maybe are a little affected, not terribly, we can market to them. We're going to do these Zoom things, these go-to things if they're still around. We're going to do that. We're going to call. There's thing called a telephone, you know, use a phone. You can email. That's safe. If you're dealing with companies that are not affected by the virus, you can engage with them. But I think it's a great question. You want to be delicate. By the way, we're already seeing the coyotes out on the pasture. I was in a convenience store the other day. The coyotes, they're out. They always are out. And it's like, are you behind on your payments? The virus affect your business? Come to us and we'll lend you money. Stay away from those people. They're already out there. It's amazing. There's always coyotes and there's always wolves out there. We want to avoid those. And the reason I love that question, I don't know who asked it, is you're a thoughtful person and you're being a kind person. Those people always win in business. You want to be sensitive to your customer. It's a great question.
All right. Well, we've got one that's just when do you determine that the business is a sunk cost? So when do you need to walk away?
Hallelujah. That's a great question. And that's why, you know, Blake, I'm like a donkey. I do better. They say that donkeys can run faster up a hill than on flat ground. When I speak, if I had a teleprompter, I'd be terrible. You know, I'm much better with the question and answer because it gives me a chance to really relate. That is the dead cat in the room. Right there. That's the dead cat. When is enough enough? So here's what I would say about that. If you were struggling before COVID, right, and you weren't making money or you hated it, you know, maybe God's talking to you. Maybe now it's like, hey, look, I'm out of here. I had a friend, Blake, who's in the cabinet installation business, installed cabinets, and they were kind of really having difficulty in the business. And this came around. I was like, okay, that's the knockout punch from Muhammad Ali. Right. So because the person didn't want to be in the business and because they were suffering already, it was like, okay, I'm out. So what I like to do when I'm making decisions to get on a positive note is this business viable? is this business positive? Do I like this business? And I want that to govern my decision as to whether I want to be in business. I don't want to be overwhelmed by my current environment. I want to look out. And this gets a little weird, Blake, but it's such a great point. My friend is guys should get him involved in your program. Scott Ogle was the CEO of SageWorks. And I mean, my brother, you know, we were together for 20 years in this business struggle. And one time, Charlie, we were a really tough situation. We couldn't make payroll. The customers weren't happy. The software was breaking. And he came to me, Blake, and he's like, how in the world do you think of this stuff? I mean, how in the world can you get through this? This is crazy stressful. Mm-hmm. But I was always reading books, trying to put stuff in my mind to give me this thing called hope. Mm-hmm. But I would say, in deference to that excellent question, it might be the question. Hey, Brian, I'm dying here, and I was dying before this thing came. There is a time in life where, and I know we don't quit, Blake. My father was a Marine. I was raised by the great Santini, Blake. You know what that is. Yeah. You know, Robert Duvall. I was raised by the great Santini. As people, we don't want to say we quit. The reason I didn't quit at SageWorks is because I had investor money, and I didn't want to go back to them and tell them I lost their money. But there does come a time when you got to really look at it. Is this business viable? And you know what? Only you can make that decision.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, it's also okay. Like, you know, we don't talk about failure a lot in this country. It's not something that, you know, is celebrated, but any successful entrepreneur Absolutely. Has failed over and over and over and over again. So, you know, I think part of it is, you know, will you regret it if you walk away, right? Like, is there something more you can do? And if so, that's good. But if not, you know, to give yourself the grace to know that, you know, like the God's honest truth is I did everything I could. And
well, let me tell you, do you mind if I tell a story about that?
Yeah, make it a quick one, because these people got to get back to their businesses. But
then I'm good. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, good.
I'm good. No,
we're gonna wrap it. No, I like
all right. Okay. No, it's okay. You're being nice now.
Tell a story, and then I'm gonna do some wrap up. You can tell me if I hit any of your points.
No, we're good. We're good. But in my late 20s, I borrowed millions of dollars. I was doing real estate construction, blah, blah, blah. And I paid the money back. I paid it back. What suffered was my relationships, my marriage relationship, so to your point, I think the word grace is a good word. There comes a time in things where if the business is going to sink you personally or your loved ones, because your loved ones are always affected by the decisions you make, then, you know, you got to sometimes look at it and say, yeah, it's okay to, quote, fail and go out and start another business.
All right. So we've hit a lot today. And I know you you know, have been through a lot of this. So we appreciate you kind of breaking it down to its basics. So a couple of things. So, you know, control what you can control, right? You know, understand, you know, that good information flow is good for the soul. That, you know, stop watching the news, right? It's you know, be human. You know, radical honesty. I think, you know, that's something that you know, you just, as a leader, we've got to do, and it's uncomfortable. Luckily, we've got a community of military family members and military members that are comfortable in that gray area and being uncomfortable. So, you know, you're giving people permission to do that. You know, and what you can control, right? I think, you know, customer service is a simple thing, right? Like picking up the phone and writing somebody a letter. Like, it is the simple, essential things right now that matter, because none of this, like everything else is sort of like, it's out the window right now. And people deal with people. So if you've got that human relationship, that's important. And then keep the ship floating. So, Brian, we're so thankful to have you. I'm going to give it to you for the last word, and then we'll turn it over to Liz to wrap us up. But thank you so much. Thank you to the Brian Hamilton Foundation for being a part of this bunker mission for years now in Atlanta and in Charlotte and across the country. I'd encourage people to go to the Brian Hamilton Foundation and look at the programs, whether it's the prison program, whether it's a youth program. All of you are at home right now with kids, so check that out and take advantage of those resources because they're interesting, they're innovative, and they're meaningful. So you can find that all at the Brian Hamilton Foundation. So Brian, thank you so much, and last word to you, sir.
Yeah, well, I'd say this. I mean, I've been really lucky. I mean, you guys are the people who ask me to speak anywhere. They never tell me what to say. I've been very nice. I just come on. I just tell all of you that what Bunker Labs is doing, I mean this. I'm a baby boomer. All my uncles were, not all of them, but a bunch of uncles. I have 46 cousins. A lot of them fought in World War II. I was raised around a lot of vets. I believe in what Bunker Labs is doing. I listen to Todd about this, and he's, like when you all know the statistics, people get out of the service. It used to be 50% of them start businesses. Now it's down to 5% or whatever it is. And so I believe in what you're doing. Anything we can do to help you out, would love to do it. I love our military. I was raised around that, even though I didn't serve. And so I appreciate what you're doing in your community. It's wonderful.
Well, you did serve, and you're continuing to serve right now with the foundation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank both of you, Blake, for leading the conversation, and Brian, it's always inspiring to hear you speak. We're getting a lot of our community is just saying thank you, that they really needed this talk today and the real information about being an entrepreneur, and for us being kind of fearlessly authentic about the struggles. We're getting a lot of that feedback. So thank you for being here and for speaking. I don't want anyone to forget that we do have a panel tomorrow as well, a virtual panel that we're going to have at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will be back live for that. That will be on Zoom, though, through a unique link that we'll be posting in the group. I hope everyone has a good rest of your Wednesday. The door is always open. Please reach out if you need anything.
Who's on the panel, Liz?
Oh, who's on the panel? Okay, so we have Mike Irwin, founder of Team RWB, who's always a great guest. And then we have Anne-Marie Craig from the Commit Foundation. We have Kathy Roth-Duquet, I hope I'm saying that right, from Blue Star Families. And I knew I was going to forget one.
That's right.
We have a fourth panelist. Do you remember? This is awful.
I don't. I'm going to ask Brian to come back.
We do have a fourth panelist. I will be posting the graphic to that.
Oh, Misty Fox, Statesman Fox from Institute of Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University.
There we are. Thanks, Blake. Teamwork making the dream work.
Brian, will you come back and do another one of these?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, guys. Good to see you, Liz. Come back to Wilmington. Get out of California.
Will do as fast as I can. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.